Hi, my name is Ed Boon. I am the creative director at NetherRealm Studios and co-creator of Mortal Kombat. We are here to talk about each and every character in Mortal Kombat 11. Baraka was introduced in Mortal Kombat 2. The coolest thing about Baraka is obviously his blades on his arms, as well as those crazy teeth of his. Fun fact is his teeth were actually fake nails that we found at a costume shop that we put together to make these kind of vicious teeth. He is a Tarkatan warrior, and his race was kind of like, always in jeopardy in the Mortal Kombat universe, and he was kind of like representing them. Well, I personally think that Baraka is one of the coolest looking characters in Mortal Kombat 11. He's got a lot of legacy people known what he's looked like since like 1993, but the visual upgrade that we gave him in this game is probably the best of any character in the game. He is easily one of the most savage characters in the Mortal Kombat universe.
What's up? Know what? That was strike 3.
Cassie Cage is the daughter of Johnny Cage and Sonya Blade, two characters who I don't think anybody would have seen getting together, let alone having a kid. She is the absolute perfect combination of Johnny Cage and Sonya. She has a very disciplined, military upbringing from Sonya, but she's very flashy, very cocky. That's the Johnny side. She's exactly what you would expect a combination of Sonya Blade and Johnny Cage to be. Cetreon is a new character in Mortal Kombat 11. She is the daughter of our big boss, Kronika. She is there to serve her mother. It's going to be really fun to see people's reactions to what becomes of her at the end of the Mortal Kombat story. Cetreon's a good example of the challenges that we have introducing a new character in the Mortal Kombat universe. By now we have about 80 characters in our roster over the years, and whenever we introduce a new one, the question is, what haven't we done before? And so her relationship, the fact that she is a character we're introducing who is the daughter of another new character, really gives us an open slate to do something interesting, and how she serves her mother and her interest is a really big part of what makes her so interesting.
This one killed many on Shao Kahn's behalf.
D'Vorah was a character that was introduced in Mortal Kombat X. She was one of the favorite new characters in Mortal Kombat X, so we knew we were going to bring her back in Mortal Kombat 11. I personally think a lot of D'Vorah's appeal is her look. She is a very unique looking character, and she has these kind of ovipositors on her back that she uses, to stab her opponents, poison her opponents. She is actually consists of a human body that has been taken over by bugs, insects, and she has some of the more kind of gruesome story mode killings that a lot of the other characters don't get to do. So she really kind of represents, Mortal Kombat from that perspective. She's also very interesting too in terms of her story. She used to serve Shao Kahn, but at the end of the day, she's really just loyal to herself and her people, and so she has some backstabbing moments that you'll be very interested to see in Mortal Kombat 11. Erron Black is another character introduced in Mortal Kombat X that is kind of like a wandering nomad in Outworld. He's one of our more mysterious characters. When we created him, we wanted a lot of his backstory to be mysterious. You know, we put a mask on him. We want people to really wonder what the history of this character has been. We do reveal a little bit more in Mortal Kombat 11, but at the end of the day, we really want him to be one of the mystery characters of the game. I personally feel that the biggest challenge we had with Erron Black was not to make him look like a typical Western character. You know, we really wanted to push that whole nomad aspect of him, you know, the wanderer, the guy who is, you know, doesn't really have a home. I personally would have liked to have him a little less cowboy than we had, but I think that he's one of our cooler, mysterious characters in the game.
Like I'm patiently waiting to kill you.
With every Mortal Kombat game, we do want to introduce a character that players haven't seen in a long time. Frost is a character that we introduced in, I believe it was Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. The simple explanation might be she's a female Sub-Zero, but she's a lot more than that. She has been cyberized, but with Kronika's kind of technology. So she's a lot more advanced. She still has the freezing abilities, but at a much more sophisticated level than the other cyber ninjas that we've shown over the years.
Within your power, Raiden.
Geras is one of the coolest new characters that we are introducing in Mortal Kombat 11, particularly because he can't be killed. You can temporarily kill him, but eventually he is going to rewind time and come back to life. So he is kind of eternal. In the game, as far as gameplay is concerned, he can actually rewind time and put himself for you in a situation that you were a few seconds ago. He can affect the game clock. So there were technological challenges that our gameplay and designers faced in terms of having the ability to rewind time. The game needs to remember what happened a few seconds ago and rewind it back to the beginning of that. So he plays very different from other characters as far as this design. As far as his look is concerned, I think he's one of the coolest looking new characters that we have in the game. Again, he's got this ethnic / magical look about him that I think a lot of players are really going to gravitate to. Probably one of the most unique characters in the game, and he has maybe my favorite fatality in the game. It's so ridiculous. He hits you on the back of the head, and your face and brains shoot out from the front of your head. It's pretty disgusting.
Now you seem overconfident.
Jade is a hidden character, originally started as a hidden character in Mortal Kombat 2. Back in the day, we loved to give players peeks of characters that were somehow hidden in the game, and Jade was one of the first ones. Reptile, I think, was the very first one. You couldn't play as them, but you could fight against them. Later, as we started expanding on the story, we really gave her more of a history. And in Mortal Kombat 11, we established that she's had this relationship with Kotal Kahn that dates back, way back. So she has really become a much more rounded character than the kind of hidden, very shallow kind of representation that we gave her in Mortal Kombat 2. Jade's fighting style, she has this really cool staff that expands. She uses it in combat. She uses it in her fatalities as well. She has this great kind of boomerang type weapon that she uses as well in terms of projectiles. So she's a really great kind of keep away character. So she was one of the few kind of all around kind of weapons based fighter.
Then I hope it washes off, Kotal.
Jacqui Briggs, like Cassie Cage, is the offspring of one of the classic Mortal Kombat characters. So Jax had a daughter that ended up just like him.
Hang back, kid. How about we keep this between me, myself, and I?
For gameplay, she's got, you know, these great arm guns on her, and that's kind of like a, you know, a little bit of a parallel with Jax, who has those kind of mechanical arms he's kind of known for at this point. But so she kind of carries on that tradition, a little bit more modern, a little bit more high-tech than her dad, obviously 25 years later. Jacqui is one of my favorite looking characters in the game. The actress and the model that we used to create the Jacqui character it's just perfect. You know, we were casting when we saw her, we were like, that is Jacqui, and you know, we knew right away that that was the character we were going to use. I often do double takes thinking that it's an actual real person in there. She looks so real.
How about you turn yourself in?
Jax is one of our classic characters. You know, we introduced him in Mortal Kombat 2. In Mortal Kombat 3, we kind of gave him these kind of cybernetic arms, which really became a big part of his signature look, his signature moves that he does in the game. Fun fact, in Mortal Kombat 2, I was the voice of Jax. I was the guy who would say, "Gotcha! Gotcha!" And when he would bang the guy and keep punching him, I was a voice for a number of characters before we actually hired professionals to do that. I was the voice of Scorpion, Jax, Liu Kang in the first game. Jax is one of my favorite characters in the game just because he is our first kind of big brawler type of fighter. You know, big guy, you know, big hits, and not super agile like Liu Kang or Sonya would be.
Have you been to Hollywood?
Johnny Cage is Mortal Kombat 11's comic relief. I think he is the funniest character we have ever made, especially his antics in Mortal Kombat 11.
What did you do, Johnny? Just what you asked. Not what I meant by the split.
In Mortal Kombat X, we kind of introduced this kind of magic heritage that he has that explains like the green energy that he can shoot out, and we also explained how he passed that on to Cassie. While he is very much a funny kind of comic relief with Mortal Kombat, at the same time, you know, Cassie was the winner of Mortal Kombat X, and it was because of this kind of magic power that he gave her that let her win. So he does have a really big, important role in the Mortal Kombat story after all.
Who hired this guy? What the Deadly uppercut, take 19. I'd never forget a fight.
I've always been the biggest fan of the Flash in the DC universe, and Kabal was kind of my personal outlet trying to get him into one of our games. You know, his super speed was absolutely, you know, inspired by the Flash. When I put that move in the game, we had to write a story about it, and so, you know, we kind of explained how we got this super fast speed. Kabal in MK11, you can actually see him in his burn state and his pre-burn state. And he has just this variety of gear that is the different variations of hooks that he has in the game. It's very cool to see this character, you know, in all his renditions. Tons of hooks, with the mask, without the mask, burnt, non-burnt, and every iteration of Kabal is represented in Mortal Kombat.
I only need 2 strikes to gut you.
Kano is one of the original bad guys in Mortal Kombat 1. You know, he has this kind of rivalry relationship with Sonya. That was really a big part of Sonya's motivation was, you know, he killed her partner. She is obsessed with getting revenge on him, and he is easily our dirtiest character. He will backstab anyone. He will do anything for money. He has no loyalty to anyone except for himself. But he has been hired to a number of times throughout the Mortal Kombat storyline to do somebody else's bidding, and he doesn't care as long as he gets paid.
On behalf of them, you die.
Kitana was a character that we introduced in Mortal Kombat 2. She is the daughter of Sindel, and she has a very complicated relationship with Sindel, Shao Kahn, Mileena, where there is probably more deceit in her story than in any of the Mortal Kombat characters. And what happens to her and her continued relationship with Sindel and Shao Kahn is one of the biggest beats in Mortal Kombat 11's story. You know, Kitana and Mileena, as far as when we introduced them, they were kind of motivated by our desire to have like kind of the female version of Scorpion and Sub-Zero. We wanted two characters who kind of looked the same but were almost the polar opposites of each other. And so we came up with a costume that the color can change and it can become a different person. You know, there were other wins of that in terms of just, you know, from a technology standpoint, the amount of memory that we had in these arcade games that allowed us to make two characters out of one. But we really wanted to have the female version of the Scorpion and Sub-Zero kind of parallels but conflicts at the same time. And that's pretty much what inspired the creation of Kitana and Mileena.
Shao Kahn demands both.
Kollector is another new character that we are introducing in Mortal Kombat 11. He collects basically heads and body parts and hearts from all the opponents that he has killed. The hardest thing about making Kollector was the technical challenges. These additional arms that are on this backpack were a design and technology nightmare. In our game, we have what we call skeletons. And so we have medium male, big male, small female, big female, and the Kollector has his own skeleton, as we call it. Because he has the 4 arms, we have to animate those independently of him and give him his own unique skeleton, and that introduces a ton of problems as far as throws, special moves, fatalities, fatal blows, all of those we have to kind of special case for Kollector. So in the motion capture studio, we would have somebody standing next to the main motion capture talent pretending to be his upper arms, and so they would kind of work in unison, you know, to do the special move, and then our animators would take those the second guy's upper arms and attach them to the Kollector's backpack, and that's basically how we managed to get 4 arms and moving at the same time.
The color is reserved for Architect Khan.
Kotal Kahn is Shao Kahn after Shao Kahn. Effectively, you can almost think of him as a boss, but he's kind of like in the same vein as Shao Kahn. And what's cool about this game is Shao Kahn, who is kind of from the past, and Kotal Kahn, who's kind of like the present and the future. With time folding, they actually meet. And that's one of the big conflicts that is in Mortal Kombat 11. And they are basically battling for who is Kahn, who is ultimately going to be the king. So the challenge was kind of like making him live up to the scope, the legacy, the awesomeness that is Shao Kahn, somebody in parallel like him, but, you know, Shao Kahn was the big boss in Mortal Kombat 2 and 3. Kotal Kahn we're just introducing, you know, how do we make him in the same league as Shao Kahn? That was probably the biggest challenge.
My penchant for deadly headwear?
Kung Lao was one of our classic characters that we introduced in Mortal Kombat 2.
Our future, Liu Kang. It is insane.
Along with Liu Kang had the unfortunate outcome of being killed and turned into a revenant.
The thought of becoming you sickens me.
What was once one of our most noble characters has become, you know, one of our villains now. His journey, along with Liu Kang's and their kind of similar outcomes, is one of the things that is kind of revealed when we bring Kung Lao from the past and he realizes that he and Liu Kang have died and have become revenants and are now bad guys. You know, the conflict that those four have together, both Kung Laos, both Liu Kangs, is to me is one of the coolest kind of novelty moments that you would see in our story mode, because, you know, seeing your future self having turned evil and how you would react to that is just such a big moment for like a hero like Kung Lao or Liu Kang. Kronika is the boss that we are introducing in Mortal Kombat 11. She is the architect of every single event that has happened in Mortal Kombat history.
This was not your destination, Ark.
You know, we learned that she wanted everything to happen. She knew everything was going to happen, all the way up to the point where Raiden cut Shinnok's head off. It's so cool because she's the first female boss character that we've had in the game. She is the boss of bosses, and I'm very excited to have people finally see who's been running the show all along. One of the biggest challenges with Kronika was what she was going to look like. She actually started off as a male character, and we tried a number of different concepts that just wasn't resonating with us. Somebody on the team, you know, suggested, what if we make this character female? And at that point, everything just kind of clicked together.
I am Kronika, keeper of time.
I mean, I come from the real world.
Liu Kang has been the hero of Mortal Kombat since the very first one. He is our protagonist. He is the main hero. He's the one who won the first two Mortal Kombat tournaments, and he is unfortunately was killed in the Mortal Kombat story and turned into what we call a revenant. And a revenant being kind of like an undead version of the character, basically turned evil. Well, what's new about Liu Kang is we get to see him again as in his heroic self. And it's also even more interesting is to see him interact with his revenant self. At the end of the day, you know, Liu Kang in his current form is still one of the bad guys. You know, he used to be a hero and now he's a bad guy, and that's what makes his story that much more interesting. He's probably the sum of all of the heroes that we've seen, you know, throughout our experiences with movies. You know, he is Bruce Lee, he is Luke Skywalker, he is, you know, all of the kind of martial arts and action movie heroes kind of lopped into one. The ultimate good guy. He's, you know, he's a Shaolin monk. He is all about good. He does not have ego. I think he's the epitome of a hero up until the point that he got killed. Noob Saibot was one of our first hidden characters in the Mortal Kombat arcade games. He had no story at the time, and then later on we established him as Bihan, who was the very first Sub-Zero. His name, Noob Saibot, is actually my name and John Tobias' name. Our last name's spelled backwards. And, you know, it was something very silly that we never anticipated to be taken seriously, let alone become the lore of, you know, part of the whole Mortal Kombat story, but there it is. Mortal Kombat 11 has by far the best visual and story representation of Noob Saibot. In a lot of ways, he reminds me of Batman.
Mother would be so proud.
You look at him and you just go, you know, what is the history behind this character? What is behind, you know, those masks? What's the origin of this character? The fact that he is so shrouded in mystery and is so cool and so many people are intrigued by it, and how he started with such a simple, really dumb idea and a dumb name that he's become one of our coolest characters is part of how interesting his story is, just from a development standpoint. Raiden is the mentor to the Mortal Kombat characters. From the very beginning, he was the one who was kind of like, guiding them, telling them what they need to do, inspiring them, and he's a god, and so he can't participate in the tournament, but he can stand on the sidelines and cheer. But he's a thunder god, and so, he commands a lot of respect, but ultimately he is kind of like the mentor to all the good guys. Raiden is inspired by a number of action movies that we all grew up on, from the 80s and 90s. Big Trouble in Little China had a big influence on us, and so there's a number of kind of visual cues that we borrowed from the character in that movie and applied it to Raiden. He has a lot more of a noble presence. He's less shrouded, like you can actually see his face, but the hat and the electricity and all that was kind of inspired, at least from the beginning, based on that character.
The Shirai Ryu embrace danger.
Scorpion is my favorite character in the Mortal Kombat universe for a number of reasons. Not only his look and his moves, but he was the first character that we got in the game that really set the tone of how Mortal Kombat was going to play. We always wanted more outrageous moves than the other fighting games that are out at the time, and so Scorpion, he teleports, he has this awesome spear that's hooked to a chain that pulls the opponent in, gives him a free hit. He became a specter because, that voice was kind of like a little hellish. His infamous fatality, taking his mask off and breathing fire on the opponent. He was also, him and Sub-Zero were kind of like the first rivalry that was in Mortal Kombat. That really established a lot of the story between those two that has extended some 20-something years later. He just represents so much to me in terms of us starting Mortal Kombat and where it's gone since then. He will always be my favorite Mortal Kombat character.
I will open your veins.
Skarlet was one of the first DLC characters in Mortal Kombat 9. She's like the blood character, She was created by Shao Kahn from the blood of dead warriors. Even though she was the DLC character in Mortal Kombat 9, she was one of the most requested to come back in Mortal Kombat 11. So when we had started this game, we knew from the very beginning that Skarlet was going to be one of the characters who was going to come back with a completely different look, a completely more sophisticated costume, and we're very happy with how players have attached to her.
A few pints of blood is all I ask.
That's exciting for us because it's always a big challenge to introduce a character when we have so many, and to have them stick, and players want to see more of them. The biggest challenge with Skarlet was probably just how far we want to take the blood concept. Blood is kind of a queasy visual, and her fatalities in Mortal Kombat 9 probably crossed the line a little bit in terms of her kind of bathing in her opponent's blood. I think we toned that down a tiny bit with Mortal Kombat 11, but where that line was probably the toughest thing with her, of making her unique and cool and dangerous, but not getting too nauseous about it.
Trust me, I'm not your type.
Sonya Blade is one of the original Mortal Kombat characters from the first game. What's interesting is the first Mortal Kombat that we tested did not have Sonya in it. It was just 6 characters. We put it in an arcade, and it was a huge, huge hit. And at that point, we realized that we needed more than 6 characters, so we decided to add a female character. We didn't have any female characters in the game, and Sonya Blade was the result of that. She was kind of like the military, special forces component to the Mortal Kombat story. Everything was kind of like, a bunch of magic. Johnny Cage was kind of Hollywood and Sonya was military, so we really wanted to kind of represent all these kind of walks of life, and she filled that void in real nicely. Sonya is one of the few characters who does not run into her former self. I can't tell you why, but it's a big deal. You'll have to play the game to see why.
Savagery is no match for skill.
Sub-Zero, like Scorpion, is visually the most recognizable character in the Mortal Kombat cast. He has a very deep soap opera-like history and story and relationship with a number of the Mortal Kombat characters. The main adversary is Scorpion, but visually, if you were to put any Mortal Kombat character in front of people, I think Scorpion and Sub-Zero would be the most recognizable. In Mortal Kombat 11, I can't give away too much. You will be surprised to see him working with Scorpion in Mortal Kombat 11 after all the history of their more adversarial relationship. Shao Kahn was introduced in Mortal Kombat 2. He was kind of like where we took our first step to expanding the Mortal Kombat universe. You know, it wasn't just this tournament. All of a sudden it was for bigger stakes, and Shao Kahn was kind of the head of all of that. His big hammer is very iconic to him. You see him standing there with a big hammer and you know who he is. His helmet is very identifiable. When we got his shoulder charge and swing with the hammer functioning in the game, we knew that there was something really special about this character. He was one of our most difficult to defeat boss monster characters because of that shoulder charge and that hammer, but probably the hardest thing was toning him down to the point where he was actually beatable. You know, he was just so ridiculously powerful in the arcades, we had to kind of dial that down a bit.
Welcome, traveler. I am Shang Tsung.
Shang Tsung is the original bad guy in the first Mortal Kombat game. As far as the arcade game was concerned, his powers were inspired by our lack of memory. You know, we had very little memory left for Shang Tsung's images, and so to make the most of what we can, we said, okay, let's just make him morph into the other characters and use their moves. And so that really just inspired his ability to turn into the other characters. It was way more of a technical limitations that we had, and so that really gave him a mystique to him. It was something that was carried into the movies and other forms of media for Mortal Kombat, and that's really what he's associated with right now. People expect Shang Tsung to morph into other people, all because that first game didn't have enough memory to give him a full moveset.
Take what you want, within reason. You'll find that time spent here is well rewarded.
Well, that's every character in Mortal Kombat 11. I want to say thank you to all the Mortal Kombat fans, both old and new, and we can't wait for you to get your hands on Mortal Kombat 11.
Finish him!